In this video, we will talk about writing the background chapters. We are working off the book written by Evans, Gruber, and Zabel, How to Write a Better Thesis, published by Springer in 2014. And this video is based on chapter 6 in this book. So we will talk about two main functions of the background chapters, which are Function 1, provide all background material needed for your research, and Function 2, provide stepping off point for your research. We will also talk about writing your background material and what you should include in the background chapters, and incidentally, what you should not include in those chapters. So let's begin. Okay, so two main functions of the background chapters are, to provide all the background material needed for your own research and to provide the stepping off point for your own research. So let's talk about function 1, providing all background material needed for your own research, right? So, the background chapters are often called something like a literature review, right? They might have it might be one big chapter with subsections devoted to various aspects of the background that is necessary for the research at hand. Or the background chapters could be several separate chapters with where the titles of each of those chapters, are reflect the substantive content in each chapter, right? So in either way, basically what the background chapters do, they essentially provide the literature review. Okay, so you want to make sure that that big literature review chapter with subsections or those separate background chapters have the following elements in them, right? So element A, it is the historical, geographical, and other descriptions of your study area, right? Provide this kind of historical and other necessary background that the reader and you yourself need to understand your research. Okay. Element B, you want to provide all the definitions and usages of words and phrases in your thesis. Okay, so often this two elements, the historical geographical context and the definitions and usages of words, they you kind of understand what is unknown to you at the beginning of your work on your thesis or dissertation, but then later as you grow more of an expert in your topic, that feeling of newness kind of fades away, and there is this the authors of this book call it the 95% syndrome, when because you know so much about your topic, you tend to think that most of your readers also know as much about your topic, and then you kind of you tend to overlook those historical, other cultural, contextual details, and maybe even provide definitions for things that you think that people know those things, right? And that might be wrong, right? So a useful thing is to keep in mind that your even your thesis committee, your examiners, they might not know everything that you know, right? In fact, assume that they don't know most of it. They might know some aspect of what you're doing, and each of your examiners or dissertation committee members could be aware of some aspect, but not the other aspects, right? So keep that in mind. And in addition, because this fade away happens in you, and it's good because you are becoming an expert, you know more and more about your topic, right? It's useful to write as soon as possible, right? Start early. Don't wait until you finish your work, until you are an expert in the field. Start writing when you are still learning, so that you still have that freshness of perspective, the understanding of your readers, the understanding of how much your readers might not know about your topic. Okay. Element C is existing theory and practice for your research topic, right? You provide, you explain you review the existing theories and ways of, you know, ways of analyzing your topic, and you might also provide your theoretical framework in which you do your own research, right? And that's important. Also, here, similar advice: don't assume that your examiners, your committee, know all those theories very well, or they know them in application to your research topic. So be as explicit as possible. Provide as much context as needed. Think back to yourself when you were just starting off, when you didn't know much about your topic. So provide as much as necessary. That's why these chapters are called background chapters. Okay. So A, B, C, these are like elements you want to have for sure in your background chapters. In some cases, depending on the topic and the field, and maybe even your committee requirements, some people include preliminary reviews, surveys, data analysis, and experiments. As background. Okay, this is not their main results, main analysis. Sometimes, in very rare cases, when it comes to undergraduate thesis, more often so in master's and PhD level thesis, right? Sometimes, just to kind of respond to motivate your research, provide background, right? You might have to conduct some kind of preliminary analysis in order to provide background again for your main analysis, right? This is very rare, but don't be surprised if you read some dissertations or thesis and you find some preliminary reviews or analysis. It doesn't mean that you have to do that because other people have this kind of element in their background chapters. Always go from your research questions, from your research aim, from what you are studying, from your topic. And if you need that, well, you could include that, but be aware that this is not a mandatory element in background chapters. It's just something that is possible to add. And I would say that happens really at more advanced levels of research. The second function of the background chapters is to provide the stepping off point for your research. Okay, so if you're having a big literature review section with subsections, right, devoted to contextual, different aspects of the background for your research, or if you are having separate background chapters, yeah, for each focused on an aspect of the background necessary for your work, each of those subsections in the lit review, or each of those separate chapters, separate background chapters, will have something like a summary in the end, or some mini conclusions in the end, right? So when you are writing those, it's important that these conclusions or mini summaries lead clearly to the research questions, research hypothesis that you will investigate in your work. This is super important. So this second function of the background chapters is really directly relevant for those, the the ending part of your background chapters, the conclusions or mini summaries. Okay, so that's be sure to not just to summarize, not just to make any conclusions, right, but kind of there already do some prep work, prepare your reader for what you will do for your main analysis, for your main empirical work. Okay, so how do you write your background material? Yeah, here are some advice, some tips from the book, How to Write a Better Thesis, right? So the first advice would be to write your first drafts as early as possible. If you are a master or a PhD student, do that in the first year of your project. If you are an undergraduate and you only have like a year maybe or several months to write your thesis, then do that in the first months of your projects. So you want to write the draft in using the style and the referencing, APA or MLA or whatever, Chicago and other styles and other things, the way that so the way that they would be used in your final thesis. Okay, do not write them just as abstract notes. Okay, really. As early as possible, start drafting the background chapters as if you are drafting the actual chapters in your thesis. Okay. A second advice is, really many researchers, especially in sciences that require conducting experiments, right? They put off writing the background chapters until they have finished their actual empirical research. Yeah. Um, it's not good to do that. Do not delay, even if you think that you need to wait for your own results, right? Don't do that. Writing early drafts really is helpful because it sharpens up your research design. By writing and rewriting your background chapters, you understand clearer where does your work contribute, where should your work develop, in which direction your work should develop, or maybe you might actually learn that you have to really completely change your research design because there is this wonderful study that already did what you were planning to do, right? So do start early, not only because you want to have something to work on, but really to sharpen your research design, to improve it. Those first drafts will clearly will likely be not very well structured, right? Because you are still learning about your topic, and you have to be prepared to revise and restructure them later, as you learn more and as you do more of your empirical analysis, right? This revisions, those are not a waste of time. This is something, a mindset that you should have, because in the process of those revisions, you are contributing to your own research. You are learning more, you are understanding better what you're doing, what you intend to do, what you have done. Okay, and really, the final tip is, as you revise your background chapters, as you progress in your work, you have to make sure that the background chapters do lead into your research questions or hypotheses. Be sure that not only those mini summaries or mini conclusions in the end of those literature review subsections or background chapters lead to your questions, but also the overall, the entire text of the background chapters kind of brings the reader to understand that your research questions make sense and that they are relevant and important. Okay, so we're moving on towards what you should and what you shouldn't include, right? And there are several things you want to absolutely include in your literature review or background chapters. And first, it is all necessary definitions and word usages, okay, or usages of ideas in your own work, okay. There are many. There's so much research out there now that you might have, one single word be used differently in several contexts, or same abbreviation used differently in many other contexts, right? So do not assume that the examiner will know how you are defining this particular term, or how you are using this particular word or phrase or this particular idea in your research. Okay, instead be examiner and reader friendly, and explicitly define, provide definitions, explain how you use words and ideas. Okay, You have to absolutely do that, especially if you are working, if you are writing an interdisciplinary dissertation or thesis, because there is more than one discipline involved, right? And there might be a more area for confusion. Okay. The next absolutely important thing you should include in your literature review or background chapters is the necessary geography, context, and history, right? You know, if you come from, say, Finland, right, and you are writing a thesis about Finland, you know a lot about Finland, right? Do not assume that your examiners or readers understand those things that you decide not to include into your background chapters, right? What if your reviewer comes from India? They don't know anything about, they don't know enough about, they don't know as much as you about Finland, right? So be careful there and provide as much geography, context, and history as necessary for a reader who doesn't have that much the same background as you to understand it, to understand your work. Next, what you should include absolutely in your thesis, literature review, or background chapters are all the arguments that are in the existing literature. Okay, and well, you can also include some tentative judgments on where you stand, but do not actually enter the argument yet. Do not here express where you stand or what your positionality is towards those arguments that are there in the published literature, right? That uh, you will do that after you present your method, data, analysis, and results. You do that in the discussion session, okay? In the discussion or conclusion section of your dissertation or thesis. So here, just present what's out there in the literature with a little bit of your analysis, but without presenting your argument or judgment fully. Okay. Finally, you want to include everything that is necessary to justify the conclusions or summaries to the chapters. Okay, because those parts in your lit review chapters and background chapters should be aligned with each other. Okay, and make sure that those mini conclusions or summaries lead to your research hypothesis or questions. Now let's discuss what you should never include in your literature review or background chapters, okay? First, if you have some descriptive material, you're describing something, right? Describing the literature, the context, whatever, but you never then use it later in the thesis, right? Anything descriptive that is irrelevant to the later subsections of your thesis should not be included. For example, you describe something and then that has nothing to do with your methodology, data, analysis. Well, kick it out, cross it out, just remove it. Your first, it's okay for your first draft to contain a lot of that kind of stuff because you're still thinking, you're still learning. You have to have a lot in writing, have your thinking in writing, but later, once you are more or less done with your you know with your draft, be ruthless and take those things out. Okay, keep only what is relevant, what is relevant to what you write about. Okay. The second thing you should never include in your literature review or background chapters is your own contributions to to thinking on the theory, right? We just touched a little bit upon it when we were talking about what you should include in your lit review or background chapters, but I cannot stress enough: don't um, do not include your contributions to thinking on the theory. Okay. Um, when you are revising your background chapters, you are likely quite an expert on your topic, and you are willing and ready and capable to make such contributions. But again, resist that temptation. Save those useful contributions for your discussion chapter. Okay. Finally, the thing you shouldn't include in your letter review or background chapters is any foreshadowing of what you will be doing in your research. Okay, just present what's out there before you have started your work. Okay, you will present what you will be doing in the methodology, data analysis, and results and discussion and conclusion sections. So not here. Okay, don't get ahead of yourself. That was it. Thank you for your attention.